Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man of the Silver Mountain, and welcome to a video that I want to do on the violence, or President Trump's violence in video games highlight reel that he showed before he had this discussion with people from the ESA. And whilst the ESA, they deserve a good kicking around loot boxes and around other stuff at the moment, considering all of this noise, all of this nonsense is being about violence in video games is once again being kind of stirred up and kicked up in the States. I wanted to go through his little scissor reel thing that was put forward for him, so that he then turned around and said and made comments on. So I've got the reel up on from the IGN YouTube page here. I've got the accompanying article from IGN so we can take a look at the comments. But then also I've got the ratings for every game shown in this trailer, as well as the ratings category and content guide, all from the ESRB, so that we can actually see whether or not these games are actually hurting children. Now I did something like this before in regards to one of the first videos I did on this and how it makes no sense, but this is what we're going to take a look at today, because I feel like there are some other things that stand out from this trailer and from the games that they selected, considering they only selected 5 games, which make this all the more interesting. So let's watch the reel first, and then we'll go through it again. Do you know what? In watching that, I've just realised I missed off looking up the ratings for the Evil Within. So let's just have a quick look at that, considering it was the last scene. So Evil Within ESRB rating. There we go. Okay, so here are some of the, whilst that's loading up, here are the comments around the whole thing. So they met with Trump here for this meeting and so on and so forth, and they said that they appreciated that he was being receptive to a comprehensive approach and all that kind of thing. And they specifically said that, you know, there's no connection between violence in video games, or video games and violence, as well as that they're protected by the First Amendment and so on and so forth. However, then Trump showed this reel that we've just watched and went, okay, so this is violence, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, but hold on, slight disconnect here, because we've got a variety of different games here. Are they affecting children, considering that there's already a certification system in place? Something that Trump didn't seem to be aware of either, which again highlights that even with his kids, which I have no doubt at least a couple of them play video games, I would imagine that it's or at least have interacted with them in some way. I'm kind of sat here going, well, he obviously isn't a particularly involved or responsible parent if he's not aware of the fact that the media that his children are consuming have these tags on it. But let's go through it. So first off, we've got Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I believe, which firstly I felt was an odd choice, because whilst it's arguably got some of the more controversial scenes, like the airport scene that we see later, it's an older game. Like this came out Xbox 360 generation. We're now a whole generation beyond that in terms of the kind of the availability in terms of hardware. But also, the most important point is that this game should not be sold to anyone below the age, and should not be available to anyone below the age of 17. Now that I'm not 100% sure of the exact parity between the UK and the kind of European system with PEGI and all that kind of stuff relative to the ESRB, but if it's been classified in this way, then it's a licensed product. Yeah, it's people have to have a license to sell products of this sort. A lot of game kind of distributors and retail outlets and so on have that, and it's fine. But the thing that stands out is that it's already very clearly labelled that this should not be sold to anyone below the age of 17. They should be IDing people. I'm sure that they are. I'm sure that they take that very seriously at the time, but that doesn't stop a fully grown adult, 30-something-year-old mother or father going in and asking for a game that their child has mentioned that they like and buying it. And there being no questioning as to whether or not they're buying it for a child, as to whether or not they're buying it for themselves or whatever else, and if they're even aware of the rating and the content of the game. So, firstly though, this game should not be harming young people. It should be kept out of their hands. In which case, if it is being put into the hands of young people, who is putting it there? Because I can almost guarantee it's not the retailers. In which case, who is it? Probably their parents, possibly their older siblings or friends or whatever else, in which case that comes to the point of its parental responsibility, not some daft stuff that's causing the issue. But also, a kid can sit down potentially and watch the same levels of violence and stuff like that on an after Watershed show on HBO or whatever else, and it's still that is seen as less impactful for some reason, arguably because you're not interacting directly with it, but at the same time, this is still more obviously limited, because all you need to do, where you can't necessarily stop them from just turning on the TV and that thing being there, here you actually have to actively turn the console on, the PC on, put the game in, start it up, get it running, do whatever. But the thing that stands out to me about this is that, more so than anything else, is that this is not representative of current games, because it's old. This game has been out for a long time. A generation ago this came out. In fact, I remember when this first came out, I was just leaving, or I just left school. It was still a case of like, I had been out of school for not too long, because my brother was still in school and he was playing this with his mates on Xbox. So it's like there are only a couple of years between us, and like this is interesting that they chose this over other more recent games, but still. Then though, moving on, we've got the dramatic knife throw, and then we've got Dead by Daylight. Is it Dead by Daylight? It is Dead by Daylight. Which again, M rating, 17 or above, shouldn't be affecting children. If it is, someone's being irresponsible. But also, this is based off very kind of tropey 80s horror, where you've got the slasher flicks. We also had, what was it, Friday the 13th that's come back recently, and we've had a whole load of 80s inspired kind of things. So here we've gone back to Call of Duty again with the very controversial airport massacre scene. But again, this is an old game that the controversy has been out around and has been discussed around for a long time already, and we've already discussed the certificate for that and Dead by Daylight already. So we've got all of that. That's done. So again, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. But also, you can walk through the entire airport, as is happening at the moment, without pulling the trigger. So there's some player choice involved there. So here we've got Wolfenstein: The New Order, and they're shooting Nazis. Isn't that a thing that happens in like every World War II thing? But hold on, before we jump on to Fallout 4, what's the rating? Oh yeah, current gen game, relatively speaking. A mature kind of 17 plus content certificate. Right, so again, this shouldn't be getting into the hands of kids, and if it is, then someone's being irresponsible, more so than anything else. So what else we got? We got Fallout 4, where I got an issue with this more so than anything else. You don't, the individual that they just shot, Trish, you don't need to kill her. You can let her go. I recently did this in my game because I was late to the party in regards to Fallout 4, and I've still not actually finished it. I've been just kind of going back to it now and again, just churning my way through and enjoying myself when I feel like just rumbling into the game, leveling up a little bit, and blowing some people away with the railgun, Gauss rifle, whatever you want to call it. But firstly, you didn't need to kill that person. You and even in here, the trigger isn't pulled on this character's weapon. His allies kill them when he gives the say so. And here, randomly shooting an NPC in the head, yeah, you can do it, but you're not, now this person is going to get hunted down throughout the rest of the place. But again, Fallout 4, M certificate, mature rating, not a child's toy, should be for, at the very least, what you would consider a young adult, rather than anything else. Someone here is being irresponsible. Who is being irresponsible here though? Because if they're 17 and they can prove it, they've got ID and whatever else, or they look they're age enough to be taken as that, which granted should still be ID'd in my opinion, and from all of the various bits and pieces that I've done in the past. But if someone comes in and they ask for a game and they are within that age limit in a provable fashion and they get served, fine. If they aren't within that age limit and they get served, that business should be crapped upon because it's a restricted product. Excuse me. But then again, how is this harming children? Unless parents are providing it to their child, which means that the parent is being actively uninformed and irresponsible. So what have we got next? We've got Sniper Elite 3, where again it's a World War II game, but also here's the other thing. Here's the thing that I think makes them unsettled about this game. This game shows a fairly interesting anatomical perspective on what bullets do to the body, especially sniper bullets. As we can see here, small entry wound, large exit wound, helmet comes off, etc., etc. It highlights the damage caused by these weapons. Why would this kind of violence make Americans unsettled, I wonder? Maybe because it prompts a little bit of a discussion. But again, also, it's a World War II game. They're fighting the bad guys from history. So it's again, that surely that's just a realistic, somewhat fanciful, because obviously you do not have X-ray vision in real life, but it's an interesting, somewhat fanciful but still very grounded approach to a World War II shooter of a sort. But what's the rating? Oh look, again, slightly older game, but more importantly, mature content rating. Young adult, not a child. Yeah, not some young kid. And so, if you're worried about these things, then you should also be worried about all the things that have been played about in the past. Music, TV shows, movies, all those kind of things. But if you do that, then you're only highlighting that your country is weaker than everyone else in terms of mental resilience and fibre. because the rest of the world has access to these things, and yet they still don't have the same amount of problems that you do in regards to this. So again, highlighting this, fairly straightforward. But then we've got The Evil Within, where, yeah, this is a gruesome death scene, but if you play the game well, you don't die. So there's that. This is a very much a more optional scene, from what I understand. I've not actually played The Evil Within or The Evil Within 2, but in watching other people play it, these kind of gruesome death scenes for the main character only seem to transpire when you make a mess, when you fuck up. And so, firstly, there's that. It's kind of an optional scene, depending on how good you are, how much you apply yourself to the game. But also, again, it's a psychological kind of twisted horror game with a lot of kind of Silent Hill and an older game kind of inspiration there. But what's the certificate? Oh, look! Once again, slightly older game, but also, more importantly, mature certificate for adults, at the very least, young adults. So again, here we go though. What are the various other bits and pieces? Well, we've got the E for everyone. We've got the everyone from 10 and above. We've got the teen rating, which according to this is 13 and above. And then you've got the mature rating of 17 and above. But then you've also got the rating pending, because obviously there are some games that might be getting released before they've been finished, early access games, continually updating games that have maybe had re-releases and things like that, whereby the rating may be reviewed and all that kind of thing. And then you've got the adults only game, where may include prolonged scenes of intense violence, graphic sexual content, and or gambling with real currency. Right, in which case, first off, the gambling with real currency thing that comes up here, that applies to loot boxes, and I know that they've argued against it time and time again, but it does. So, time to deal with that, I think. ESA and ESRB. Graphic sexual content. Well, they in this regard, they don't just mean the kind of tangential softcore HBO-esque kind of stuff. They're basically talking about porn games. And then intense violence. I mean, that's a very subjective way of putting it forward, but there are lots of games that you could consider it to be intense violence, but there aren't that many that get this adults only rating, this 18 plus rating, that then also can't be kind of sold through Steam and other various online places and all the rest of it, in which case game studios that want to be sold through that tend to develop their games with this in mind to one extent or another. And obviously the ESRB informed by the ESA informed by the industry, so they probably have a much greater and overall fleshed out idea of what intense violence in this regard actually means. However, here it goes, it may contain intense violence, blood, gore, sexual content, and or strong language. Right, but that's still for basically your young adults, and your young adults and above only. If these games are still getting into the hands of other people, younger people, then you're probably going to be needing some help with that. So that's the real here, and I just wanted to show how this what they're showing, it's misrepresentation. It doesn't actually apply to what their discussion is. But there's one other thing that I want to take a look at with this in mind, because in my last video talking about this and going through some of the various issues and how it's irresponsibility on the part of either governors in terms of governing bodies or in regards to parents, there's one other game that was mentioned there, and that was Fortnite. ESRB rating. Where are we? This one had the thing on it for before. So, T for teen, which according to the ESRB's rating is 13 and above. So that's even more stringent than Peggy by a year. And so, like the woman in Britain, the mother in Britain who was complaining, well, her son was 2 years below this limit, in which case he shouldn't have had access to the game in the first place. Some of the people that have been talking about it in the States as an addiction and all that kind of thing, Well, great. If they're 10 or they're like 9, there have been videos showcasing 6-year-olds. One even by one of the YouTubers that I watch play Fortnite a fair amount. He came across a 6-year-old child playing the game and he tried to help them win. But again, that child shouldn't have had this game. Shouldn't have had access to the game at all. At the very most, they should have had access to the game maybe if they were playing with someone. Maybe. Because that's what that's where 12A kind of certificates sit in the UK. So it's like that's the case here. But it's not the way that it's panned out. So it's again irresponsibility in the form of just plain ignorance and kind of an uncaring attitude until something goes wrong. And then it's all this medium's fault. When this medium has been demonstrated to improve things like memory, problem-solving skills, hand-eye coordination, can help to generate social skills even, other things that have never been able to be done by your average bookworm or kind of isolationist, kind of introverted movie buff. All of those things from the past. You can become a gamer and be an introvert and enjoy your time by yourself in your room, and yet still find yourself enjoying social interaction and time with friends through this medium. It doesn't mean that you give in to one part of yourself whilst allowing kind of other skills and things to atrophy. And yet, even though you've got, again, a fairly standard and conventional set of ratings here that apply to every game and that are really easy to follow if you're a parent or a business that just needs to look at it responsibly. It's not difficult. So to President Trump, who's going, is this not violent? Yeah, it is, but it shouldn't be in the hands of children. No game that you put there was it was below the certificate of M. Anyone that's complaining about games like Fortnite, there are various things to complain about in regards to Fortnite and Epic Games' handling of the game. But there are not complaints around what certificate it should be. Or at least there shouldn't be. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because again, we've got these rating systems. I'm sure you guys, a good number of you guys, have come to watch me play games. That's the way you found your way to the channel, and then you've decided to stick around for whatever reason. Hopefully because of these videos, or because of videos in regards to helping you guys out with coaching stuff. But you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you a parent that plays with your kids? As I said in my last video, I would love to play games with my kids. But I'm going to play games that are appropriate to them. I'm not going to sit them on my knee and go around doing heist missions or blowing stuff up in Grand Theft Auto, or going and, I don't know, jumping into a game that's got even something as simple as the Shrouded Isle. Some of the images in that are quite creepy. I wouldn't have a 6-7-year-old kid, 8, 9, 10 even maybe, sat on my knee or even sat with me to play that kind of game. There are other games that are just as good, just as interesting, that I would play with them instead. For instance, the Lego games. The Lego games are fucking amazing, and yet these people aren't looking at those. There is going to be a point where they want to play games that are outside of their age bracket, in which case you're their parent. Be strict. Make sure that they know what the limitations are and that they adhere to the rules. When they hit those age boundaries and are able to move on beyond them, then sure, give them what they want. And then if they act up because of that thing, then you can maybe moderate and see how it works. As said, I love the idea of gaming when I'm an old man. Why? Because it means that if I have children, if I have grandchildren, then if they're gaming too, which I would imagine that they would be being my kids, it's a case of then it doesn't matter where they are, what I'm doing, and all the rest of it. We can all enjoy a piece of media together. A piece of media that, as said, can it help them engage with problem solving, help them improve their thought processes, help them with social skills and with other bits and pieces that they can pick up as transferable skills from the games. But anyway, guys, as said, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because this is a... Whoops, I didn't mean to bring that up. Because this is an interesting topic that is... It keeps coming back, and it's just because we're not developing anything new again. Like, it always used to be, oh, it's rock and roll, oh, well, it's comic books, oh, it's movies, it's D&D, it's violent TV, and yet now it's seems to be stuck on this cycle of video game media, because the next step out of video game media is immersive experience media, which is going to be part gaming, but is more likely to be, well, to hit the element where it would be substantial enough for people to take aim at it. We'd probably be looking at something like Westworld, which is a long way off, a very long way off, at least to one degree or another. So, you know, that's why we're stuck on this cycle of always blaming video games, because the old people are not getting into the medium, and they're the ones making the rules, and they're slipping away, and it's something that's new and different that they can't get into, that scares them. And so then, though, you know, thankfully we're getting this tick around of people who are younger, getting into those positions of power, taking a look at these situations and being able to bring some element of sense to it. But there's still a long way to go when we've got, especially as said, this is mostly happening in the States, where an awfully large chunk of the gaming industry is based, and their leader is an incredibly old individual, relatively speaking, compared to certain other presidents of recent years and their time in office. He's much older. He's far more ignorant and arrogant, and so taking note of these things is something that he's going to struggle with, or at least he's going to flip-flop on time and time again, because that's what he seems to do. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Would you play games with your kids? If so, what games have you enjoyed that you'd want to introduce your kids to? That's an interesting one. You know, what would you want to play with your kids, and when would you play it with them? You know, would you feel that, oh, the clunky graphics of a game from the 90s that was an M then, but, you know, you feel now it's more in line with a teen because it just doesn't show off as well? Would you play that with your kids? Or would you stick to Mario? You know, I'm interested to know your thoughts on that. But anyway, guys, otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.